I wrote The Mark of a Mother, and I don't know if any of you have ever shot a bow, but there's this target, and in the middle is what we call like the bullseye. It's usually small, and then you have this ring, and a bigger, and a bigger. And so when you aim your bow, you're aiming for the smallest spot in the middle. This is what they would call the mark. It's interesting because actually in English the word for sin means to miss the mark. But there is many good places you can land and you get points, but when you hit the mark it's bullseye. It's like the best that you can achieve. I don't know if we realize how significant and impactful of a role we have in our home, specifically in the lives of our children. And I'm writing this obviously as a mother, a wife and a mother, but even if you, I want to say this at the beginning instead of the end, even if you don't have children, or if you're not married yet, or God hasn't given you children, or if your children are grown, there are many children to impact the lives of. Whether they be in our church family, I pray that God one day will have many, many children in the church that God is building here. Or whether they be your nieces or nephews or cousins, or maybe you teach in a school, or maybe you teach online. You're going to be around children. And the same thing, obviously mothers have a very special place in the lives of their own children. But any child that you come into contact with, that God gives you the ability to have some influence in their life, you have the opportunity to either influence them towards the Lord or to influence them like everybody else in the world is going to influence them. So don't, just because you either don't have children yet, or you don't have children at all, or your children are grown, whatever the case may be, don't tune this out and say, oh, well, this doesn't apply to me. Or maybe you even have a friend that's maybe either a Christian or not, and they need this advice. Maybe they're searching, and maybe they don't know, and you can share a lot of this information with them if this isn't the season or the place that God has you in yourself. My children spend nearly all of their time with me. Do you know what that means? That means that I am probably the #1 greatest influence in their life. If not, I would have to be close. I would say for my children, I teach them at home. They're all very young. They're not going and spending time with other family members. They don't go and stay at any friends' homes. They spend sometimes a few hours a week maybe with only their father, but for the most part, they spend every single part of their day, and evening sometimes, with me as a mother. So that means that I am probably, at least in this season of life, going to be the greatest influence, the greatest impact on the way that they think, how they're behaving, what is coming into their mind, how they perceive everything in life. Motherhood is a beautiful gift from God, one of the greatest, in my opinion. There is much to be said. However, when I was praying today about this devotion, and God made it evident that in the vast amount of information, encouragement, praise, and advice that could be given about this gift, the greatest of all is this: don't miss the mark. I don't know why there's a question mark. There shouldn't be a question mark. What is the mark? Jesus. Uniting your precious child to Him. Bringing your child to Jesus. Guiding your little one to Him, that he may know Him, your child. Boy, in this case I put he because Shayla is having a little boy, but if you have a daughter, if you have boys and girls, that your child may know Jesus, know Him for Himself, that he may call upon Him for salvation and choose to follow Him. In other words, that it would be something that is your faith, but that it truly is passed on to your children, that they would know Jesus personally. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. My husband did. But there's many children that go to church. They go to maybe even a good church most of their life. And then as they become a teenager or maybe a young adult, they stop. And many times from my experience, those children never truly knew Jesus personally for themselves. They went to church, they went through the routine, they maybe had a good home life, but they never had that true relationship that was very personal, that Jesus was their God, their Savior, their friend, their comfort, their peace, all of those things. Today in our society, loving parents strive to pour into their children and help them develop skills and talents. I know many mothers who delight and brag when their young toddler can count to 20 or say all of their alphabet without mistake. Many enroll young children in special classes for martial arts or football or ballet or gymnastics or whatever sports you can think of. Some even enter their children into pageants. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen in the U.S., we have these beauty pageants, or maybe it'll be some kind of, I don't know, holiday, and they will have around 4th of July, they'll have some pageant, and people will dress up their babies. It's scary. Some of these pageants, even they get fake hair for the baby, fake teeth for the baby. They put makeup on someone like Amelia's age, and they enter them in these pageants, and these children start to win a prize, they win money, they win. It's crazy, but they do all these things at a very young age. These things are not inherently bad. It means that they're not necessarily all bad. We know it's important to teach our children about responsibility and good manners and kindness and self-discipline and many, many other things. Educating our children is good, and helping them to find God-honoring creative outlets is good. But our greatest and most vital job as mothers is to teach our children who Jesus is, how deep his love is for them, how he is a faithful judge, how he hates sin, and yet gave his own life for us as sinners. We must open the Bible daily and read to them and pray over them and with them and show them by example our dependence on him. Our lives can become so busy with good things, and if we're not careful, those good things can crowd out the best thing and the most important thing. The moments can turn into days, and the days fly by as years, and one day our children will be grown, or maybe they already are for some. When that day arrives, our children may be strong or beautiful. They may be incredibly intelligent, hardworking, or talented. They may become students with honors, great businessmen, cunning writers, famous athletes, set out to write their own books, or 1,000 other things. But if we have helped them to achieve any of this without knowing who Jesus truly is, it's all in vain. Or in other words, it's empty. I don't know how that word translates for y'all, but it's like nothing. Mark 8:36 says, "For what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world?" Not just one or two good things. Maybe he's got a lot of money, or maybe he married a good godly wife, or maybe he had, several children or had a successful business. But it says, shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul. What does that mean? That means that there are even Christian families, sadly some that I know personally, that their children go through the motions, or maybe their parents, yes, they went to church, but they also put a huge emphasis on education or athletics or extracurriculars of some sort. And this child came to this age where they're now 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, and they never truly understood their need for salvation. They never truly, maybe sometimes, I know it's common in America, and I don't mean to but there's this common theme that Jesus is nothing but love. And Jesus just loves you, and you just go to church, and you pray maybe at meal times, and you do some small devotion, and Jesus just loves you, and he accepts you for all that you are. Many of those things are true, but Jesus is also a just God, and he does still hate sin, and there is still going to be what we call a judgment day. And your child is not going to stand at judgment day with you, Hejiani. Your children, if God gives you some, are not going to stand beside you. My children won't get to line up by mommy, and mommy says, yes, I've accepted Jesus for salvation. Here's the rest of my family coming in. It has to be their decision. And how are they going to make that decision if we don't work hard to teach them? I don't mean just, sometimes I am guilty. Today it was a busy day. And Katrina and I were talking a little bit about this. And it can be easy to wake up to a busy day, especially as a mother. And, the laundry's overflowing. Oh, we've got an appointment. I've got to be here. I told somebody that I would take them to the doctor's office. You can have so many things. And you're like, Lord, I don't have time. I don't have time to hardly do my own. my own Bible time, let alone like sit down and read to little Susie. Susie's only 2. I mean, how much does she really understand anyways? But that's got to be it. Everything else has got to, if you're so overloaded as a mama that either, we got to take them to soccer practice, or maybe it's just that we want to make a good homemade meal and we got to go to the grocery store, and we have to schedule and prepare and look at our lives in a way that keeps Jesus in the center, not only for ourselves, because there's no other way you're going to be a good godly parent if you don't have Jesus in the center, but to also bring these little ones so that they can know who he is. And it can't just be a little bit. It's, I was talking about the power of influence, and sometimes our children, they don't have a lot of Serbian friends here. I would say they have no Serbian friends. They have acquaintances, they have neighbors. They have kids that maybe they'll go play at the park with. But my kids can go to the park for 30 minutes and learn one new word, or watch some child do something to another child that they've never maybe witnessed before, and they come home and that has stuck like glue in this little mind. They'll say something and I'm like, where did you learn that? Or I'll hear them singing something, and it came from one instance. How much harder are we going to have to work, whether it be in our own children's lives? Obviously, that's what we're specifically talking about today, but even if the Lord ever gives us children in our church, or if you volunteer in a school, or if you volunteer at a daycare, or that's your profession, how much harder are we going to have to work to put in the good stuff? Put in the truth about who Jesus is, what he loves, what he doesn't love, how he... And sometimes you think, well, I've shared the gospel with my niece. I've shared the gospel with my cousin, with my own child. I've shared the gospel... I teach a Sunday school class, or I teach at a daycare, or I help, and I've told that child, no, it's like watering a plant. You have to keep doing it, and over again, and never think, well, I've said enough, because the devil is out to destroy your children. He doesn't want them in heaven. He doesn't want them with God. He doesn't want them to be used by God while they're on this earth. And he's going to do everything he can to destroy that opportunity, and he will keep you busy doing good things as a mom. You will think, I have my home cleaned up. I'm trying to keep my home clean, trying to make good homemade food. I want my child to be able to do art programs, or this activity after school, or even maybe, the idea of homeschooling can be very overwhelming, and parents maybe struggle with that. And he can keep you busy doing many good things, and yet you're missing the most important. And it's easier to do than you think. You can think, well, of course I'm going to keep Jesus first in our lives. Of course we're going to read the Bible together. Of course we're going to pray together. Of course I'm going to... And it's very easy to say that, but life gets busy. And I love this verse in Deuteronomy 6:7. It's on your paper there. It says, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. I don't know about you, but it sounds kind of like all day. Does it sound like all day? Sometimes Katerina comes to my house. She sees that my whole day revolves mostly around my children and but I have every opportunity all day to be sharing truth, to be sharing Jesus. Your brother hit you. Well, how does God... Let's stop instead of just, okay, you shouldn't have done that. Don't do that again, or correcting them and moving on. Why does it matter how we treat each other? Why? Because someday when our children are grown, I like to watch some of these like debates. I don't know if you ever on YouTube, where there's like a Christian talking to maybe non-Christians, and maybe it's like on a college campus or like young adults, but especially college campuses. And if your children don't have a shield, and their shield's not built in the Bible, and those atheists and those ones that are mocking come and start throwing darts at that shield, they're going to poke a bunch of holes. And your child may walk away from the faith entirely. I read a prayer letter actually from one of our missionaries this morning. I think it was this morning. Maybe it was last night. And it broke my heart. And I don't know all the details, but it's a missionary couple probably in their 50s, and all their kids are grown and out of the home. And they're talking about how 2 of their 3 sons have recently been influenced by some sort of false doctrine, and how they now have questioned everything that their parents taught them, the entire way that they were raised, and have changed what they believe altogether. Now, I don't know what all that includes. Maybe you say, well, as long as they still believe in Jesus, that's all that really matters. Well, you're going to have to decide that for yourself. But if it's not lining up with the Bible, then it's not lining up with what our Jesus believes, right? Or who he is, or what he stands for, and what he wants for our families and our lives and our witness. So I just say that so when you become busy with motherhood, I'm thinking of Patricia, she didn't get to make it today, and sometimes you think, all I'm doing is changing diapers and feeding them and changing their clothes and giving them a bath and rocking them to sleep. Oh, they woke up, now I have to rock them back to sleep. But every opportunity that you get, every single opportunity, pray with them, sing godly songs to them, tell them what God's doing in your life. And, I think it's funny. Sometimes people say, oh, kids don't really get it. You'd be amazed what a very small, very, very small child. I mean, Marco's big now, so I don't even count him, but I think of Amelia. Amelia will be copying parts of songs. Amelia can say, the smallest things, and they're listening. They're listening. If they can memorize, what is it? I think. Some of these kids' TV shows, I can't think of all, but like the little nursery rhymes and all the songs on it, if they can memorize that at 2, I have heard 2-year-olds quote scripture. Amelia's not there yet. But they can. And you can sing Jesus Loves Me, and you can teach them biblical songs, and it sticks. So don't ever underestimate, but don't waste your opportunities. And this last verse is John 17:3. It says, and this is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent. And again, I love that verse, but just to think they're the only true God. There's so many falsehoods, so many lies, and even people who are preaching a different Jesus. I think it's Galatians. It talks about they've preached unto you another Jesus, not the one that we are preaching, the one that's coming from the Bible. And there are many false Jesuses out there, ideas. We're getting ready to have a conference in December, and an ex-Islam is going to share what he used to think about Jesus. He believed in Jesus, but certainly not the Jesus that we worship. So we've just got to be, as mothers and as women that know the truth, very, very diligent to guard and protect, first of all, like the time that you're going to do this with your children. And you have to just make it happen. And it's the devil doesn't want you to. And just there's so much advice about what to do, what not to do. There's so much controversy about sleeping habits and what to use and all these things. But I was just like, Lord, there's so much. And we just had Patricia's shower not too long ago, and I shared a lot of like practical and different things there. But I just thought the most important, if my children are grown one day and they don't have their own faith and they don't know who Jesus is for themselves, and it's not a rock solid foundation that's like they can answer for themselves why I believe what I believe. Not just, this is what my parents taught me, this is what I've done my whole life, but this is why I believe this. Then it's all in vain. The man that's gained the whole world, but he loses his own soul. It's empty. And so, very simple thought, but just really, there's nothing more important that I could think of to share or to try to encourage. And like I said, there was a time when I didn't have children, but there was a lot of children I had. Like I said, I hope God gives our church more children one day. We're talking about doing a thing at the orphanage, and right now, I think Matthew said that the orphanage was like, no, you can't share anything about God, you can't teach any lessons or anything like that right now. But God can change that. And who knows, one day we may have different opportunities for us to go in there and sit down and have different groups with those children. And you can go in there and tell them how pretty they look, or you can talk about sports, and you can do all these things. But let's make sure that the most important is that we're pointing them to the truth of who Jesus is, how much he loves them, how much he desires them. I think that's all we have to say, yeah? Okay, so I don't usually pray when we're finished, so I'm not going to. But I think we'll have Shayla come open gifts. That way everybody can see that, and then if somebody needs to go, they can. Otherwise, we do have a couple fun games to play. Does that sound good? Okay, I'm going to hit stop on the camera. So.